Good afternoon. My mother is American. They were in America for a long time. We think since the early 1800s and possibly even before that. They were in America for a long time, and then before that they came over from England. My dad's family is from England. Walmsley is a name from Old England. My family is originally from the Lancashire area in northwest part of England. My dad was born in the UK. Both my mom and dad were born in 1940, and that was during World War II. My mother had an uncle, my grandmother's brother, who was killed in that war in Europe, fighting against Germany. My dad's family had it a lot worse. German bombs fell onto England every day for months. My grandfather and grandmother each lost many relatives and neighbors during the war in England's war against Germany. After the war, my grandfather moved his family, including my dad, to America. And a few years after that, my grandparents bought a Volkswagen. It was a Volkswagen bus. Long before we had minivans in the United States, my granddad bought one of this. It looked like this, not exactly, but close. And he put almost 1 million miles on that Volkswagen bus. In fact, he died before the car did. He loved that thing, and I loved it too. And he was happy to tell everyone that if they didn't buy a car from Volkswagen, that they were throwing their money away. This is a business channel, and it's not supposed to be about me, but we're trying to make a bigger point here, and this might be the best way how, so please just hang with me for a minute. I'm trying to explain how my grandparents had every reason in the world to never buy a product from a German factory or a German company ever again for the rest of their lives. And nobody could have blamed them. Let's come back to this point later. Let's be clear and honest about some things. Supply chains. We don't have supply chains anymore. They're China's. China owns the supply chains in basically every important industry now, all the way up to the mines and the refineries. They're China's factories too. So when we read articles and news reports about US and European governments who are concerned about our global supply chains, this is a personal pronoun problem. They're not ours. The supply chains and the factories, they belong to China. What belongs to us then? If China has the supply chains and China has the factories, what are we left with? Everything else. They're still our consumer markets. They're still our branding and our merchandising. We own the customer service and after sales support. We've got the warranty work and the repairs and maintenance and the service work. They're our showrooms. They're still our customers, and they're our profits. We make all the money from the time the products leave a port in China from then on. We make almost all the profits for the entire life cycle of the products and the product lines. And the Chinese need us just as much as we need them. What is the point of a factory if there's no way to sell what the factory makes? What good is the best products at the lowest prices if customers don't know about them? When American and European executives are here and work with Chinese factories, we are equals, at least. There are many factories in China that can produce equipment and trailers that my company buys, for example, and they know it. But I am the only one that they're going to meet with this month who will be buying the equipment, sailing it across the ocean, and selling it for the eastern United States. We need their products at high quality and at fair prices, but they need me just as much. And we'll come back to this point later too. Here is a headline about Volkswagen. The governments of the EU are pushing companies there to de-risk from China, bring factories and businesses back to the European Union. Volkswagen is doing the opposite. going native. Volkswagen is closing manufacturing plants in Europe and opening them in China. They need to be much closer to the EV, that's electric vehicle, supply chains. Volkswagen knows already that it's not their supply chains, they're Chinese. And so if Volkswagen wants to use their supply chains, that they need to be in China too. The New York Times has a very strong story about it from 3 months ago. The link is in the description below and it's by subscription. So we'll share the entire article at the end of this video and you can pause it and read it as slowly as you like. We'll hit some of the main points here though. The problem for Volkswagen and the car makers is that China can produce electric vehicles, EVs, at less than half the price of anyone else anywhere and still make money. Car prices are just rocketing higher in Europe and in North America, where the average price of a new car is $40,000 or more. So that leaves a huge market for cars at lower price points, even for customers who would prefer to buy a car with an internal combustion engine, a regular engine. Most car buyers are probably more interested in saving money than they would be in saving the planet. And for most car buyers, an electric car with a 300-mile range is fine for almost all their transportation needs, especially if they can swap out the batteries instead of taking the time to charge them up. That right there, battery swapping, that's a feature now of Chinese electric cars. China also has a functional monopoly on the refining of graphite and on most of the lithium. So they have a tight grip on the supply chain for the batteries that go into all these electric vehicles and equipment. And they've made it quietly clear that if Western companies want access to these batteries, they need to have the factories here in China that make the rest of the car. So Volkswagen has a dilemma here then. EU regulations call for phasing out of internal combustion engines, but our car makers can't make affordable electric cars. Only the Chinese companies do. That means Volkswagen needs to make some big changes, reinvent itself somehow, or go native, as the Asia Times put it. They have no choice but to double down on what they've already been doing in China. Volkswagen is a very successful brand here, and Porsche and Audi are part of VW's product lines, and they're popular in China too. They have 20% or so of the market here in China through their joint ventures, but on the EVs, the Chinese brands are just killing them, just like everyone else. And at the price points that Chinese brands can sell their electric vehicles, that is a threat to Volkswagen's regular engine models too, across the world. Here is a list of the owners of Volkswagen. Porsche is number 1. Number 2 is Lower Saxony. That's a state in Germany, so it's a government basically, and they have 20% of the voting shares of the company. Number 3 is Qatar Investment Authority. This is a sovereign wealth fund of Qatar. And this group is very close and friendly with the government of China. In 2015, Qatar set up a clearing hub so that Chinese RMB could be used to do energy trading in the currency of China. The Chinese had a bilateral deal with UAE a little bit before that, but Qatar really got them going with this regional RMB trading hub there. And in 2022, Qatar and China signed the longest energy contract in history. It's a 27-year liquefied natural gas deal for 4 million tons of LNG per year. These payments are also in Chinese RMB. So these guys in Qatar, they have a lot of goodwill here in China. They were the first mover on China's RMB swap line strategy in the Middle East, and they are really very well respected here. So the Qatar Investment Authority now owns over 10% of Volkswagen shares and has 17% of the votes. Now Volkswagen is opening new factories in China. And I think I've got this right. So Qatar sells 4 million tons of liquefied natural gas to China. China turns that LNG into electricity. Volkswagen buys that electricity to make their cars, and the Qatar Investment Authority makes money again. Pretty clear these guys are pretty smart. The Qataris are making money on everything, and Volkswagen has them on their board. Who else is making strategic decisions at Volkswagen? Here's the New York Times again. European labor leaders hold nearly half the seats on the company's supervisory board. Now, these labor leaders, why would they agree to move so many jobs from Europe to China? Let's assume they're pretty smart too. And here's what they might be seeing. Yes, we are losing many of our manufacturing jobs here in Europe to China on the front end. And we're not happy about that. But we still have all the manufacturing of our internal combustion engine vehicles here. We also get all the maintenance and repair work for the electric vehicles being built in China, which will be sold here in Europe and possibly in North America too. And since Volkswagen's electric vehicle production in China is not a joint venture, it's all VW. It all belongs to us as soon as we can get it onto a ship outbound China. So those jobs for all that business, we will be getting back. That's probably what Volkswagen's labor groups are thinking. YouTube sends us a report, an analytics report, and tells us every day who our audience is. And for this channel, Inside China Business, 85% are male between the ages of 45 and 70. The majority of you are business owners or senior executives in private companies. It even tells me where you live, country by country. Business owners and executives then. So when you have your shareholders meeting, the ownership meeting and board for your company, who is there? In your own business, do you have someone from Qatar's sovereign wealth fund? Someone who can give you $1 billion if you need it? Someone who can pick up the phone and call their friends in China, friends in China's Commerce Ministry or at China's central bank, and have them set up a meeting for you tomorrow? Because Volkswagen's got that. Do you have on your ownership board a major US state or Canadian province? Volkswagen is partly owned by Lower Saxony. They can literally go to work tomorrow and change a regulation. They can pass a law which helps Volkswagen. Do you have that in your company? Because Volkswagen's got that too. Do you have a logo that is recognized across the entire globe? 5 billion people on this planet see this thing and know right away what it is. Volkswagen is synonymous with quality cars at a fair price. Go to any country, find someone there over the age of 10, ask them what this is, you'll get the same answer. Yes, that's VW, German company. Really good cars, good price. For Porsche, fast cars, high price. For Audi, luxury cars, high price. Does your company have one? Because Volkswagen has one. Finally, does your company have a mystical relationship with consumers that transcends everything else? That no matter how bad things get in the world, between governments, between nations, even world wars, does your company enjoy that level of prestige and trust that when it's over, people will still buy from you and forget that any of it ever happened? Because Volkswagen's got that too. Consider how deeply you understand your business and your industry. How does that compare with Volkswagen's understanding of their industry and in their business, the automotive industry? Volkswagen has money from Qatar. They have political support from the German government. They have huge labor unions. And they have some of the strongest brands on earth. And what is their strategy for the next 5 decades? that they should ignore what their own national governments are telling them. They need to work with Chinese factories, use Chinese supply chains. And as soon as these products are on a ship, they will make all that money forever. The Germans will do the design. The Chinese source the raw materials and build. The Germans put their logo on the hood of the cars. The Germans deliver. The Germans maintain and repair. The Germans earn a lot of the money inside China, and the Germans earn all the money outside China. That's the business model. That's the business model for my company, a small American company. That's now the business model for Volkswagen, a giant German company. It's the business model for tens of thousands of companies of all sizes and in all industries. And maybe it can work in your company too.